to ensure that the country is run the best way possible. You might see me just cleaning up my workspace here as you join in on the Facebook platform. I do find it helps me to think clearer when I have a clean and clutter-free workspace. I know a lot of people might feel that way as well. So, as I was saying, it is our prerogative to ensure that our country is run in the best way possible. And the only way for us to do that is to ensure that we keep a sharp eye out for everything that is untoward. I'm not saying we have to simply object for objecting's sake. What we need to do is to examine, weigh the pros and cons, and understand what's happening. And in that way, we get to make constructive choices and give constructive criticism that will allow our country to move to the next step. A lot of people are daunted from the election results, saying that we have no opposition. We don't need an opposition. As long as we have ourselves, as long as we have each other, we're going to ensure that this country is run in the best way possible so that it benefits every single St. Lucian citizen. It is our civic duty. And we're not going to renege on it, people. In fact, I won't let you. So today, I'm going to bring you to one of the best, I think, analytical minds that we have in St. Lucia today. I really admire the way this gentleman takes stuff and breaks it down so that the average layman or laywoman, layperson, so to speak, can understand. And of course, I am referring to Mr. Tommy Descott. You would recall that iconic interview that Tommy had with the late, great Lisa Joseph, where Tommy broke down the economic impact of the crime situation that we are facing. And he is doing no different with this new podcast that he has on economic development in St. Lucia. And I wanted to share this latest episode with you guys because we've been hearing a lot from our Minister of Tourism about how great tourism is doing in the country. Every time you ask him a question, he simply says, "Oh, it's the greatest. It's the best." He uses words like top class, like we're expecting a bumper year. We're expecting, it's always, he always tells you exactly what you want to hear. Thank you. I neglected to thank my listeners today. I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was because I was so excited and I wanted to ensure that we don't get any copyright infringement. But let me just quickly take some time to thank everyone. Thank you for joining us on the 107.7 FM frequency on your radio. I see you. You think I don't, but I do. Thank you for joining us on the 107.7 link. I see you too. Thank you for being here. And of course, those of you joining us on the Facebook platform, I definitely see you. Thank you for being here with me today. So, No special shout outs, not because I don't love you guys, but because there's a lot to discuss and I want to get right down into the nitty gritty of this because Tommy is doing such a great job breaking this down that I really want to ensure that we get to discuss it. Okay, now, guys, please give me a minute. I know you guys love to call in, but if you would just give us a minute and allow me to get into this with you before you start calling and changing the topic like you normally do, let's just understand this. Okay, so Tommy started a podcast recently, and it's called Island Development Insights. Now, this is the second episode, and it's titled, Should We Be Concerned About the Performance of St. Lucia's Tourism Sector? And I'm going to have to put my glasses for this one. Oh, I always forget that I wear glasses now, guys. It's so troubling. So troubling. I always forget. Might end up looking like Steve Urkel by the time this is done. But it is necessary. I want to make sure you guys can make informed choices. So here goes. Whoops. Sorry. Okay. So it starts with an overview, of course. It says St. Lucia's tourism sector is faltering at a time when much of the Caribbean is recovering. Did Tommy listen to the Deputy Prime Minister? He said everything was great. Why is he using words like faltering? Let's continue. St. Lucia's tourism sector is faltering at a time when much of the Caribbean is recovering. Data released by the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank in December 2025 show that total visitor arrivals fell by 3.9% between January and September. And that is equivalent to 14,463 fewer visitors than in the same period a year earlier. So this year, between January and September 2025, we saw 14,463 fewer visitors than January to September 2024. The IMF has described this as a clear underperformance relative to regional peers, attributing it primarily to hotel closures and reduced airlift in 2025. Yet, the data suggest the weakness is broader and more structural in nature. Every major tourism segment contracted. Stay-over arrivals declined by 3.2%, which is the equivalent of 10,574 fewer visitors. Cruise arrivals by 14.4%, the equivalent of 69,084 fewer passengers. Yacht arrivals by 6.8%, which is 2,148 fewer passengers or arrivals, and excursionists by 17.8%, which is 1,741 fewer excursions. This was not a single market shock, but a system-wide slowdown affecting the island's principal growth engine. And he further breaks down, a look at the market composition reveals a worrying story. The stayover markets reveal where the strain lies. Arrivals from the United Kingdom fell by 18.2%, amounting to 10,482 fewer visitors. Canada recorded a 14.3% decline, or 3,800 fewer arrivals, while other countries, largely continental Europe, fell by 6.8%, equaling 1,011 fewer arrivals. These losses were only partly offset by the United States, where arrivals grew by 2.3%, adding 4,345 visitors, and by a marginal increase from the Caribbean market of 0.9%, from 40,938 to 41,312. The result is growing dependence on a single source market, whether policy induced or imposed from outside. The United States now carries the weight of St. Lucia's stayover performance, cushioning declines elsewhere, but increasing exposure to external economic and geopolitical risk. Cruise tourism, fewer passengers despite more calls. Now, you would recall again, and I like to go back because I want to make sure that I provide my listeners with fact-based information. I don't like just saying things as if I'm throwing stuff at the wall and hoping it will stick. Remember, I told you a few days ago that persons who work at our points of entry were complaining that there were fewer visitors. Remember a caller to this show who said that the Avia, which is the biggest boat from P&O Cruises to visit St. Lucia, arrived on the island with very little passengers. It was very under capacity, and this is a ship you would recall that carries 8,000 passengers. So when you lose that kind of capacity, you've lost a lot. And of course, you heard yesterday the Minister for Tourism saying to a reporter who asked him about the cruise arrivals that he was very happy because the illusion is that more ships are docking in St. Lucia. But this does not, according to Tommy's numbers, this does not support more passengers. So we have more boats coming in, more ships coming in, but less people on those ships. And we need to really examine this because this, guys, you may not notice it now, but this is a problem. This is a problem that needs to be rectified as soon as possible. Let me remind you, St. Lucia, we are not a country that has any sort of manufacturing capabilities right now. No, I need to rephrase this. It's not that we don't have the capability to move into manufacturing, but we don't have that sector. We don't have a strong manufacturing sector. I think that's the most accurate way I can say it. Yeah, we have little people doing little things, and kudos to them trying their best. but we need a more robust manufacturing sector if if we are to diversify our economic growth and our GDP. Now, if like me, you were born in the 80s, you would have heard the talk of diversifying because back then we were largely dependent on the banana industry for our economic growth. And we had tourism, but it was underdeveloped at that time and it was on a much smaller scale than it is now. But it was there and it was seasonal. Also, we had a little bit of manufacturing. Those of you like me who are from families that are mostly agricultural, the plantocracy, I like to call them, you would recall that we had the Coconut Growers Association manufacturing plant over in Soufrière, in Palmis Soufrière to be exact, where we made products like coconut oil, margarine, blue soap. You remember that? So we also had the alcohol sector, which was Spirit of St. Lucia, Bounty Rum, right? The Spirit of St. Lucia, let's just say, was a lot stronger in those days because we had the St. Lucia distillers and we had a bit of manufacturing. We had a little bit of everything. Also back then, we had those factories. Those factories like the different factories that used to compile parts. I think it was computer parts. I might be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure there's somebody out there listening who has more information and who would love to share it with me. So we had those factory shells in Odsa that employed hundreds of people apiece. So our economy back then in the 80s, oh, somebody's reminding me also we had animal feed. I think we still have Caribbean Greens that does animal feed. Oh, it was called Animatics, right? But I think we still have Caribbean Greens, which does, I think they do animal feed and they do flour and stuff. But we had a little bit of manufacturing to even things out. We had the fashion industry, Belle Fashion, Caribel Batik, Bagshaws, Victoria's Secret. It is a widely known secret in St. Lucia that Victoria's Secret's underwear collection and other things were being put together right here in St. Lucia, sent overseas where the labels were put on the thing. Yeah, Manumatics. My mom told me about that. So back then, we could afford to allow our cruise industry or our tourism industry to slide a little bit. We had bananas. Bananas was bringing in millions of dollars, over about $40 million on a weekly basis. That was huge. And we had manufacturing and we had all of this. And so we didn't really need to be on top of the tourism industry the way we need to be on top of it right now. So, reading this, it's concerning because now we need our tourism product to be tip top. We need to be up there. We need to grow because basically this is our only source of how do they call it? There's a certain name that they call it. I'll get back to that. But this is our only source of outside revenue. Okay? So we cannot afford to let the tourism industry slip. And every single time you ask the minister, and you guys heard him yourselves, every time you ask him about the state of tourism, he always talks it up. He always says everything is great. What are these people just messaging? He always, guys, give me a minute. I need to stop this. People are just messaging me. I don't know why, but let me continue. Anyway, so to learn, and we know that Tommy is someone who does his research. Tommy goes out there, he gets information from the IMF, he gets information from the World Bank, he gets information from the CDB, he gets information from the ECCB, and he compiles that information, he tabulates it, and he ensures that he gives you a very clear picture of the state, the correct state of things. So let's continue. Let's continue with Tommy's dissection of our tourism performance for 2025. Once again, I got to put the eyes on. Not used to this yet. Say close to my eyes. I can't take this. Okay. So the cruise tourism, like he says, he does a deep dive of everything. So let's take it step by step. Cruise tourism, fewer passengers despite more calls. So he says here, cruise tourism performed even worse. Passenger arrivals fell by 14.4%, in line with a 27.8% decline in cruise calls from 292 in 2024 to 212 in 2025. Now, we're specifically talking about the period between January and September because, there are some hacks out there that are going to come and tell you, oh, this is not true. We're seeing more cruise ships and all of that. But we're talking about a specific period of time. People are already jumping in, and I'm going to get to those. I'm going to get to those messages soon. So he says here, even more telling is the longer term comparison. By 2024, cruise calls were 9% above their 2019 level, yet cruise passenger numbers remained 63,000 243 below pre-pandemic levels, suggesting smaller vessels, altered itineraries, or weaker onshore demand. Then he goes on to explain spending declines while exaggerates impact. I'm not sure if that's what he wants to say. Visitor spending mirrored the downturn. Total visitor expenditure between January and September fell by 7.2%, or, and this is phenomenal, guys, $192 million. But even when expenditure appears strong, it overstates tourism's domestic impact. Tourism receipts recorded in the balance of payments capture gross spending, not what is retained locally. So, using such an indicator might actually prove not very useful, coupled with the fact that it methodologically, using such an indicator might actually prove not very useful, coupled with the fact that its methodological accuracy has been called into question by the IMF. And again, you would recall that incident where the IMF sent out a report stating that the tourism numbers were overinflated, that we were using small sample size. And when the minister was asked about it, he said, oh, but they wanted to know what was happening in 2019. Really? Then the minister was asked by the IMF to provide more information on the CIP, and he said that, and I quote, the CIP wanted to know people's personal information and he didn't think it was necessary, end quote. You guys remember that, right? You were right here when I played it. Okay. So, in 2024, total tourism expenditure was estimated at $3.6 billion. Yet, the combined contribution of accommodation and food services and transport, meaning land, sea, and air, to GDP amounted to roughly $1.7 billion, just 47% of headline tourism receipts. The remainder leaks out, if it ever reaches St. Lucia's shores, through imports, profit repatriation by foreign-owned hotels and airlines, international booking platforms, and prepaid travel arrangements made abroad. Employment. The numbers don't add up. Now, when I read this part, I just smiled to myself. Because if you are a regular listener to this show, you would have heard me saying so many times, where are these individuals employed? What businesses have popped up and have created such mass employment to show this dramatic decline in our unemployment numbers? To this day, I have yet to find out where these individuals are employed. And people want to say, oh, construction, you can't find people to work construction, and hotels and new hotels and this and that and the other. But guys, and here's the thing. If you're going to tell us a lie, tell us a lie about something that we cannot fact check so easily. So you're telling us that in the tourism industry alone, unemployment is down. Employment is through the roof. But we have 3 hotels that have been demolished and are awaiting rebuilding. We have so many fewer rooms. Doesn't add up, does it, people? And then, so back then when they were touting the unemployment numbers at record-breaking lows, Secrets Hotel was closed. Starfish closed. Royal St. Lucian closed. St. Lucian by Rex closed. If they come to us now and say there's a spike in employment, we can say, well, yeah, Starfish opened its door. Not Starfish, sorry. Secrets has opened their doors and people are employed. But we still have 3 hotels that are closed. The new one that's supposed to pop up onto the scene, Galaxy, those 300 rooms, first quarter of next year. So, yeah. But let me let Tommy explain it, because he explains it better than I can. So it says, employment, the numbers don't add up. One statistic does not fit neatly. Employment in tourism rose sharply in 2025. The sector employed 17,025 persons in the third quarter of 2025, up from 13,871 in the third quarter of 2024, an increase of 3,154 workers, even as arrivals fell by nearly 4%. This divergence raises questions about data consistency, labor productivity, or lagged hiring decisions taken during the recovery phase. Has tourism recovered? Only partially. By 2024, total visitor arrivals reached 491,573, equivalent to 98.5% of the 2019 total, which was 499,261. Stay-over arrivals, however, have fully recovered, rising from 380,791 in 2019 to 435,573 in 2024. This recovery was driven almost entirely by the United States market, which surpassed its pre-pandemic level by 2022, rising from 191,719 in 2029 to 210,166. All other markets remain below their pre-pandemic peaks. Canada at 87%, the UK at 98%, the Caribbean at 68%, and other markets at 73%. What is certain is that the recovery is narrow and uneven. A fragile outlook. Looking ahead, risks are skewed to the downside. Heightened geopolitical tensions involving the United States, St. Lucia's dominant source market, alongside weak growth in the UK and Europe, could further suppress arrivals. And we've already seen, guys, that Americans are being told not to travel to Grenada. And Grenada is the home porting. Sorry about that. Let me just grab some water. I'm having a bit of water. Much better, guys. So, Grenada. We were talking about Grenada. So, Grenada is the home porting for the P&O cruises. This is where they home port. That's their home porting venue. And the P&O cruises, it's P&O cruises. They have the Iona, the Ventura, the Britannica, and of course their flagship, the Avia. Huge ships which carry huge amounts of passengers. And we cannot afford, as you can tell, to lose passengers. But these ships are coming in almost empty, or let's say not full capacity, because again, our highest source market is the American market, and American citizens are being cautioned not to travel to Grenada. So these are the heightened geopolitical issues that are emerging out of the United States, and these affect us a lot, according to the little children. Of course, there are other ships, there are other cruise lines, but do they have the capacity to bring in as many visitors as these major cruise lines? The answer obviously is no. Even with increased cruise calls, and I've noticed, I don't know if you've noticed, I don't know if you've walked through town when there are cruise ships in the harbor, but I've been noticing lately that while we might see plenty of ships, you don't really see that many actual tourists around. Have you noticed that as well? So, let's go back to Tommy's assessment. Looking ahead, risks are skewed to the downside. Heightened geopolitical tensions involving the United States, St. Lucia's dominant source market, alongside weak growth in the UK and Europe, could further suppress arrivals. Cruise tourism remains especially vulnerable to security concerns in the wider Caribbean. What does this imply? St. Lucia's post-2020 tourism performance appears to have been driven less by domestic competitiveness than by a region-wide rebound that is now fading. As neighboring destinations such as Grenada, and I told you guys about the home porting, Dominica, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, which just last year opened the sandals, and St. Kitts expand airlift, add hotel capacity, and in St. Kitts' case, push aggressively into home porting, St. Lucia risks losing market share. The data points to a deeper question. What is St. Lucia's tourism strategy for the next 5 years and beyond? Without a clear answer, the island risks remaining dependent on favorable external tides, mistaking recovery elsewhere for resilience at home. What's next? A more comprehensive analysis will follow to establish whether St. Lucia is in fact ceding market share to its regional peers, particularly within the OECS and Barbados. The evidence warrants closer scrutiny. And he says that we should stay tuned. Now, I'm going to go over this in a bit, but I have so many comments on the Facebook platform that I really need to give them a voice. So here it goes. We turn our attention to the Facebook platform. It says here, the Minister of Bacchanal never gives the correct figures. Okay. Somebody was talking about what we used to make, animal feed, and we had manumatics, bell fashion. Somebody is saying, what do you expect Ernest to say? Another says, basically, we burned down our important bridges and we are standing on one leg to survive on one industry. Another is saying, good afternoon, Angie. A mere increase in tourism numbers provides no consolation to us, given the fact that GPH has gobbled up virtually all the head taxes. And that, my dears, is another thing that we need to discuss. Now, back in 2019, because that was our best year on record, St. Lucia received $6.50 US for every cruise passenger who visited the island. That amount was distributed in such a way that St. Lucia was able to do the most with that money. $150 went to the, is it 150? Yeah, 150 went to solid waste management, which ensured the island stayed clean and fresh and garbage free. $250 went to the government of St. Lucia to augment our GDP. And $250 went to the St. Lucia Air and Seaports Authority, SLASPA, to enable SLASPA to run its affairs independently. And we've seen throughout the years that SLASPA is the best SLASPA was the best performing statutory body on island. SLASPA never operated in the red. They were always in the black. They always had their I's dotted and their T's crossed. Today, the SLP administration, led by the mysterious Philip J. Pierre, has, yes, I know that it's supposed to be the Honorable, but I'm changing his designation to what he really is. Mysterious. Because it's still a mystery to me why he was... let that go. Let's stick to tourism. Let's not sidetrack. So, the SLP administration, led by the mysterious Philip J. Pierre, during their last administration between 2021 and 2025, chose to hand our ports of entry, and by that I am referring to Port Castries and Port Soufrière, our cruise port operations, to be exact, to a company which we still are very mystified about. That company is Global Ports Holdings, or GPH, as it has come to be known among St. Lucians. GPH acquired our cruise operations. They acquired our cruise ports, Castries and Soufrière, for a meager $1 a year. In return, GPH is supposed to build a boardwalk on the Castries seafront, revamp the vendors' arcade, which they were supposed to do without displacing the vendors, but they have not honored that part of the deal. Also, GPH is supposed to take over a loan that SLASPA was paying quite comfortably, I might add, before they came on the scene. But they're taking over this loan, $20 million loan, which SLASPA took a couple of years ago, to upgrade the porting facilities at Point Seraphin. In exchange, well, not in exchange. Also, GPH is receiving the lion's share of our cruise head tax. Now, I told you before that the head tax was $6.50. That number has since doubled to $12.50. Close to 50%. Close to 50%. I'm sorry. I'm having a little Minister of Education moment. That would be close to 100% increase, because the cruise head tax is now $12.50. And it is separated in this way. So solid waste management retains their $1.50 because the cruise passengers need the streets to be clean. SLASPA, however, has been downgraded to the wife that St. Lucia no longer wants to be with. No. The recently divorced wife, who gets a little bit of alimony because SLASPA now gets $1 per cruise passenger, And GPH, the shiny new mistress, gets $10. Now, you guys would know that the shiny new mistress, her only job is to just look pretty. And to do so, she needs to get the lion's share of the money. So this is the situation that our cruise tourism finds itself. The wife who worked hard, building it up, positioning us, supporting us, listening to us vent, ensuring that the house was clean, the groceries food was cooked, the groceries were bought, the laundry was done, the ironing was done, the dishes didn't pile up in the sink, the house was kept properly maintained, the kids were going to school. Slasper has been divorced, relegated to the back, and the shiny new mistress, GPH, is here. And she's doing the bare minimum for the most. Tell me you have a better analogy to describe that. But that is what it is. Now, let's turn our attention to the WhatsApp platform. Oh, so somebody said we'll take this up in a little while because this is a bit off topic, and I really want to talk about these tourism developments. So let's go back to the WhatsApp, to the Facebook platform. So it says here, it was Kenny Anthony who closed all these factories by adding higher taxes on them. I remember that as well. Somebody says, Angie, honestly, I don't think anything good will come out of this SLP government. Right now, they are a one-man show. Lucians look for it. I would like to know how they will get out of this mess. Me too. Another one says, do you remember that it was under Labour, the then Kenny Anthony administration, who put all our eggs into one basket? Somebody made a statement earlier, and somebody says I refer specifically to cruise tourism. Yeah, well, that's the subject we are discussing, the cruise tourism. We haven't touched the airlift yet because I'm hearing some even scarier things about airlift. And we haven't even touched that yet. We're simply talking about the cruise tourism industry. Somebody says, I just don't understand why Hile lies so much. It is just sad. You don't understand why he lies so much? Because everything has to look top class. Everything has to look good. I was watching, I love African movies, Nigerian movies specifically, but anything from Nollywood. Some of them, don't knock it till you try it, guys. There are some of them that are very, very informative. For example, there was this one talking about how to manage money, how women specifically could manage their salaries while still looking good and keeping up themselves and stuff like that. And they were saying that in Africa, in Nigeria and other African nations, the onus is on looking rich as opposed to actually being rich. Dr. Hille is trying to get our cruise tourism to look good, to look successful, as opposed to actually being successful. And that is why He gives us only the good news. He uses words like top class. He uses words like booming. He uses words like bumper crowd. Every single time he comes on, you ask him a question. Oh, we're expecting a bumper crowd. I don't know, but the only when he says bumper crowd, he doesn't give me the expression that he wants to give, because to me, I'm thinking, is he talking about how many people can fit on a car's bumper? Because that's where we're at. But I digress. Somebody else is saying Hilaire thinks he could fool the people all the time. Not all of the people. Not all of the people. Somebody says Rex is flat down. Another is saying, I hope I did water collecting this week. I like that. Another says, they're employed on social media talking crap. Another one is saying, Angie, I don't know why Hilaire is lying to the people. Of course he did. Come on now. Somebody says he's getting away with everything he does and will do. Another one says, I can never call PJP honorable. Why should you? He calls himself mysterious. Somebody says, interestingly, they called Slasper's loan a debt. Somebody says, so Angie, what's the side chicks getting? My girl, you don't realize, you didn't check what I told you. The side chick is solid waste. Solid waste is consistent. She getting her 150. Keep up with the analogies. Keep up. We have Slasper, who's the wife that they toss aside. $1 alimony, that's what she gets. We have the side chick, St. Lucia Solid Waste Management. She getting her 150. She not in that. And then we have GPH, that's the shiny new mistress. Makeup have to buy, hair have to be done, nails have to be done. How do they call it? The BBL? I don't know. You know, she have to look good on St. Lucia's arm. Keep up. Y'all really, come on, man. Y'all better than that. Somebody is saying the Labour Party is always very good at putting a band-aid on big bobos and never get a cure for the bobos. Ebe actuellement, se bobo sa commence kahen gangrene. E ki samtale, yo kay ni pou amputate. Now, in my Jukba voice, Hodja sav, an vat vie fam la, avant di yo ou nan gad an lep yo haka amputate. Tanto. So this is the situation, guys. St. Lucia is really... Oh, one more thing I forgot to add to the analogy. So I told you GPH was the shiny new mistress. What I didn't tell you is that GPH, like the shiny new mistress, she ain't doing nothing much for us, you know. She ain't washing, she ain't cooking, she ain't cleaning. All she is worried about is making herself look good. So you see boardwalk being built. You see boardwalk being built. You see Banans Bay going to be taken over very soon. You see construction along the close to La Place Carénage because Arcade need to revamp. But the $1 a year, that contract, which is for 40 years, because it's for 30 years, with how do they say this? I don't know all the terms. With the option, I'm just going to use option because I don't remember the legal term. With the option to renew for another 10 years. That has not commenced because part of that, in order for that part of it to come into play, GPH has to finish all construction. Think about it, guys. Somebody says mistresses don't cook, clean, etc. Exactly. Now, before St. Lucia divorced Slasper, they should have figured out that mistresses don't cook, they don't clean, and they don't do laundry. You see, while Slasper, the wife, was ensuring the windows were clean, the cobwebs were taken out, everything was on point. Mistress GPH is simply there to look pretty and siphon off resources. So this is the situation that we have now found ourselves in when it comes to our cruise tourism sector. Now, I heard the the Deputy Prime Minister talk about how we're going to be having so many more rooms. I want to ask the Deputy Prime Minister, where are the tourists who are supposed to occupy those rooms? Are these rooms only going to be full during carnival and jazz time? I heard him say that he was going to bring in, what did he say? He said that they were going to, a few years ago, let me just try to recall. Let me crank the old noggin there, guys. A few years ago, I seem to recall the Deputy Prime Minister talking about increasing our tourism product, going into festival tourism, making our tourism product a year-round affair, which sounded a lot like the Soleil Festival that they bashed into obscurity. You remember that? There are people in St. Lucia that don't even know what Soleil is, but talk about it being better. Talk about the St. Lucia Jazz and Arts Festival being better than Soleil. Now, if you remember Soleil, there was the rhythm and blues. Soleil came in different parts. There were different segments to it. So there was the pure jazz, rhythm and blues, summer music festival, all of that. And it was a move to diversify our tourism product and to bring it into the 21st century, so to speak, to not allow all of our eggs to be in one basket. But of course, they had to bash it. Never mind that we had lost BT as our marketing tool. and our main sponsor. Never mind that all of the people coming in for jazz were a lot of international artists, and the local artists were not really being given an avenue. Now you hear the Minister of Tourism, you've heard, or if you haven't heard, you will hear him talk about the orange economy. But let's be honest. Apart from the Denry segment guys and Ricky T, who are really doing things, all our other artists are. Somebody says Slasper is now the job. No, my friend. Slasper ain't getting near enough money for her to be the Jabal. I'm sorry. Slasper is now the wife that has been relegated to the sidelines. Keep up. So, all of our other artists, they're not being given the spotlight. And you know why? Because as much as the Labour Party government talks about the orange economy, the creatives, the youth economy, have you noticed that they never promote St. Lucians of excellence until these St. Lucians have become excellent? Have you noticed that they're not in the habit of building up our local talent until that talent has made a name for itself? Somebody says, has he abandoned his quest to diversify into religious tourism? Bel Chesio. I haven't heard anything about religious tourism as yet, but my ears are to the ground. I'm listening. Let's take, for example, our star player now, our MVP, Julian Alfred. Until Julian put her feet on that Olympic track and devastated. I have to say that again. Devastated. Let me tell you something. Guys, let me tell you. I remember where I was. I remember I was at Sky FM doing a show when somebody called and said Julian just won the gold medal. Somebody said the race is on. Julian is about to run for the gold medal. And I switched. I went to look at that race and I forgot I was on the air. I'm so sorry to my listeners that day because I was screaming so much in that studio. I had tears in my eyes. I was proud. I still can't think about that race without getting emotional. But until she did that, nobody wanted to see Julian Alfred. Until Ricky T became our star soca artist in the region, nobody wanted to see Ricky T. Until Denry's segment started being picked up and being played all over the world, nobody wanted to see Ampa and the other guys. Because in St. Lucia, they are not interested in building or nurturing our local talent. They're not interested in that. They're not interested in supporting our people as they learn and go through they take the knocks, they get back up, and all of that. They're not interested. And I say this particularly because I remember quite clearly a young man in St. Lucia, a young St. Lucian man, a cyclist. His name is Denver Alphonse Jr. And although lately I have not really followed him because he was called to represent St. Lucia in Canada, and I don't really know how that went. But I remember his dad saying to me one time that he had called Choice TV to have a story run about Denver's performance in a certain race. And he was told by the editor of Choice at the time that he came in third place. That's not good enough to be on the news. Notwithstanding the fact that this young man, 19 years old, is he 19 already? But he started cycling when he was 16. He was a student then of the Entrepreneur Secondary School. This young man wakes up every morning at 4 a.m., cycles, is out training before 6 a.m., is putting in the work, has been called to several races all over to represent his country. He has won races in Martinique, dominating in his grouping, because there are age groupings and whatever. And of course, there are times when Denver goes out there where he doesn't do too well, like that time when he came in third. And there are days when this boy is like Julian Alfred on wheels. And I was fortunate enough to actually see a race of his that was held in Castries sometime last year, and I was so impressed with his performance. Tiny little thing. Tiny little thing. But with heart, determination, this kid is going places. And the editor of a news station right here in St. Lucia, who probably doesn't even know anything about what it takes to make it in the sport, who probably doesn't even realize that cycling is a team sport, that this kid is going out on his own, taking on teams from around the region and internationally, and still coming in the top 5. You think that's an easy feat to accomplish, St. Lucia? No, it's not. Somebody says Bacchanal and more Bacchanal. Festival tourism and sports tourism and the Bam Bam Wall are the same products of the Labour Party. Same animal, different owner. Kenny and PJP. Somebody says when he gets to the podium, SLP will say they made him. I doubt. So, if you want to be part of the orange economy in St. Lucia, you have to already have your own economy. Don't think they will pick you up when you are down or you're up and coming. St. Lucia don't have time for up and coming. St. Lucia only has time for already there. They've claimed Julian Alfred from top to bottom. They've claimed Darren Sammy, but nobody in St. Lucia knew who Darren Sammy was before he got drafted to join the West Indies team. Laverne Spencer, as soon as she retired, they forgot all about her. I'm pretty sure Laverne is somewhere doing big things. And if it wasn't for the National Archives, who gave these people a Lifetime Achievement Award, or in fact, not just a Lifetime Achievement Award, they inducted them into the Sports Hall of Fame, nobody would remember Laverne Spencer the same way hardly anyone remembers John Eugene. And these people paved the way for everyone who has followed. Now, I am not saying that the state owes anyone anything. But promote your own. Do you remember, guys, when the Jazz Festival made its reemergence? No, not jazz. Hold on. I don't want to give any wrong information. It wasn't jazz. It was carnival. You guys remember how some time ago there was a big push to invite influencers to our events? Who could forget the Nigerian influencer, sorry, not influenza, that's the flu. Influencer. What was her name? I'm sorry, I still can't remember who she is. But she was taken from Nigeria, brought to St. Lucia to drum up, to act as a marketing tool, I think. I'm not sure. For our carnival. Right. Cora. Somebody called her a beggar. Don't be like that. Her name was Cora. Cora something or other. And she came to St. Lucia and she behaved in such an untoward manner. I think I can safely call her influenza, She was climbing on tables and talking about St. Lucian men and right. Somebody say Korea. Mama Cora OBD. Somebody says she lives in the USA. Mama le koi sorti koyale. Massive. But I'm just saying. But we have St. Lucians who have an international following. For example, Moncherie. And she's been saying for so many years that she would relish an opportunity to perform in her home country. But she has never been afforded this opportunity. But we have influencers coming and disrespecting our country, because I remember this girl going to Grocery Friday night and climbing up on tables to act. I had to just pause because the words, the descriptive words that were coming to mind really shouldn't be uttered by any Christian woman. Now somebody says, Angie, make this make sense to us. How on God's green earth that PJB can say that St. Lucia is on the list of visa banned countries with 75 other countries, as if that's a justification for being on the list. He needs to tell the people why we are on the list. They sold our passports to criminals like themselves while they were getting rich. A bunch of thieves. My love, like I explained to my mom last evening, Philip J. Pierre's only aim is to confuse St. Lucians so thoroughly that they will eventually stop asking the pertinent questions. And if you haven't figured that out by now, you're rather slow to the, you're rather late to the party. He wants St. Lucians confounded, kerfuffled, and quite confused. He wants to make steam come out of your ears. He wants to fry your brain cells the same way. You know what he wants your brain cells to look like? You ever notice when you forget kidney on the barbecue and it get black and hard, and for you to eat it, you almost want to grate it into a powder? That is what he wants your brain cells to look like. And that is why he will continue to behave in such a manner. Because when I ask you a question and you start telling me a whole bunch of foolishness that have nothing to do with the question, self-preservation kicks in. My brain retaliates, because the brain is a perfectly calibrated tool in the human being. Your brain retaliates, and your brain goes into protection mode. So you stop listening. You tune out. You understand what I'm saying? Somebody's saying here, Sharon, amen, bravo. Another one says, Alibaba under the 15 thieves. What is he? Never mind. I need to purge. Let me drink some water and mind my business on that comment. That comment too strong for me. Somebody is saying both parties are guilty. Another one says her name is Cora. Somebody saying both parties. This has been the biggest secret ever in government. I have no idea what this person is referring to. Another one says, that's so true. The person comes back again talking a whole bunch of foolishness. I have no idea what they're talking about. Propaganda. Whoever you may be, and by the name on your by the name on your by your name on here, this seems to be a fake profile. You obviously have not gotten the memo. First of all, this is not a propaganda show. This is a show which adheres to the principles of accountability, transparency, truth, and integrity, number one. Two, if you come to listen to this program, you're very welcome. But do not come here and talk foolishness without proof. So when you want to say that I am pushing propaganda, please enlighten the audience about what propaganda I am pushing. But be warned, come correct, because this is a no-nonsense platform. This is and will remain a safe space for intellectual discussion on current events. And if you persist in your foolishness, your comments will be deleted. Once I have deleted your comments 3 times, you will be banned from the page. So you're accusing me of pushing propaganda. Come with your argument. Enlighten the viewers on this propaganda that I seem to be pushing. You have 3 minutes to state your case. No. This person needs to state their case. And I'm giving them 3 minutes because that's about the time you take to type 1 paragraph. In the meantime, of course, I will read out some of the comments from the WhatsApp platform. And again, 3 minutes. You want to challenge me? Come correct and come with your facts. Somebody says, good day, Angie. Evening 1 is seeing the exciting movie, but the real movie will start when the budget will be announced. Why all the increase that was given like madmen? Let's see how it will get paid in continuity. No drugs money can come, and to sustain this madman fiasco, let's see the taxes in 2.5 months' time. The rest I will disclose on the government officials. Will serious monies unaccounted for? Okay, again, you can't just say that like that. You need to give me, you need to give some proof. You know that's how we do it on here. I get it. You know about, and I guess this person is referring to all of the new persons or the increase, a serious increase in the public sector wage bill. Let us see, according to this individual, how these things are going to be paid. Okay. Somebody is saying, oh, so this person has suddenly disappeared and they cannot give credence to what they are saying? Okay. Your comments are going to be deleted from this page because we don't suffer any fools here on Hardtalk. You can disagree all you want, but you disagree with facts. If you don't have facts, you're out. Bye. No nonsense here on Hardtalk. As we were saying, if you cannot if you cannot prove your point, then you don't deserve to be here. Simple. Somebody says, and then he comes back and bite his tail. Well, you know how it is. Somebody says, Angie, please don't be distracted by these big fools. So many people are calling to block this individual, but hey, if you cannot come with facts, get out. Somebody says 133 out. Another one says, Angie, please don't take these losers on. They have drunk from the poisonous SLP cup. Flush them out. No. If somebody is of a contrary opinion, this is a safe space, like I say, for intellectual conversation. So I encourage all. But if you're going to come correct, come with facts, and don't waste my time. Respect my viewers and respect my show. Somebody says, no, you're not. They still do. Oh. I'm not going to read that comment. Again, that comment does not conform to our statutes here on Hardtalk. Please, people, please. No derogatory comments, no insults, no disrespect. This is and shall remain a safe space for intellectual conversation. So I'm going to delete that comment, and I really hope this individual chooses their words more wisely next time. I understand the frustration. I understand that you feel that we're being taken for a ride, but please be respectful in your comments. Somebody says they just want us to stay like fools while their party destroys the country. Another says, don't entertain that tet, they suffering in silence. Well, somebody said these are those the Labour government are fooling because they don't listen. These hacks, they will never learn and always stay stupid. Angie, no need to comment on this. Flush it or kill it, sis. Well, it's dead. I can tell you that. Another person says, Angie, take a page from Bowtie, flush them. Hi, good for them, my love. I can take care of myself. I give everybody a chance. You have a chance to make your comments, but my platform will remain. The foolishness is going on Newspin, where while Timothy is having his show, there's another show going on in the comments. Paisia. This is Hardtalk. This is a serious platform. Yes, we laugh from time to time. Yes, we package things differently. Of course, we have to have a competitive edge. But we don't disrespect and we don't talk foolishness. Everything that is said here is backed up with facts. And if you don't follow the rules, you're gone, you're banned. Goodbye. Simple. So let's go back to what we were talking about, the important issues. So we're seeing this major decline in the tourism industry. And we're seeing the tourism minister attempt to make it look good. So he is putting on sexy outfits on the declining numbers, sending them to the spa, getting their hair done, their nails done, their makeup done, just to prop them up and make it look good. Showing the camera the better side. You know, when you take a photo, you turn your best side to the camera so you look good. This is what is going on right now in our tourism industry. Because I've noticed that the tourism minister comes and he gives us numbers per month. This month we had the best month, the best January since 2019, the best February since 2018, the best this, the best that, right? You notice that's how he gives the numbers. He gives you a small sample size so that the numbers look good. You put in the girdle on the protruding belly of the tourism numbers to make it look flat and sexy. But while you might be able to fool some of the people some of the time, you cannot fool all of the people all of the time. Now, I need to open up the phone lines, guys. 572-3473. In the meantime, for those of you just joining us, I want to go back and read Tommy's assessment again, so that you know exactly what topics we are discussing. So while I read this, and he even has a new development, but we can take this up tomorrow. While I read this, I'm going to give you guys a time. I'm going to give you guys some time to call in. Again, the numbers are, well, it's only just one number. We didn't want you guys to be confused. So the WhatsApp platform, the number for that is 572-3473. And the landline, once again, 572-3473. So let us just read Tommy's assessment while we wait for the callers to call in. And it says it's from his podcast, Island Development Insights. And it's titled, Should We Be Concerned About the Performance of St. Lucia's Tourism Sector? Overview, first section. St. Lucia's tourism sector is faltering at a time when much of the Caribbean is recovering. Data released by the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank in December 2025 shows that total visitor arrivals fell. Total visitor arrivals fell by 3.9% between January and September, equivalent to 14,463 fewer visitors than in the same period a year earlier. The IMF, that is the International Monetary Fund, has described this as a clear underperformance relative to regional peers, attributing it primarily to hotel closures and reduced airlift in 2025. Yet, the data suggests the weakness is broader and more structural in nature. Every major tourism segment contracted. Stay-over arrivals declined by 3.2%, which is equivalent to 10,574 fewer visitors. Cruise arrivals by 14.4%, the equivalent of 69,084 fewer passengers. Yacht arrivals by 6.8%, 2,148 fewer arrivals. And excursionists by 17.8%, which is 1,741 fewer excursions. This was not a single market shock, but a system-wide slowdown affecting the island's principal growth engine. A look at the market composition reveals a worrying story. The stay-over market reveals where the strain lies. Arrivals from the United Kingdom fell by 18.2%, amounting to 10,482 fewer visitors. Canada recorded a 14.3% decline, or 3,800 fewer arrivals, while other countries, largely continental Europe, fell by 6.8%, equaling 1,011 fewer tourists. These losses were only partly offset by the United States, where arrivals grew by 2.3%, adding 4,345 visitors, and by a marginal increase from the Caribbean market of 0.9%, from 40,938 to 41,312. The result is a growing dependence on a single source market, whether policy induced or imposed from outside. The United States now carries the weight of St. Lucia's stay-over performance, cushioning declines elsewhere, but increasing exposure to external economic and geopolitical risk. Cruise tourism, fewer passengers despite more calls. Cruise tourism performed even worse. Passenger arrivals fell by 14.4%, in line with a 27.8% decline in cruise calls, from 292 in 2024 to 212 in 2025. Even more telling is the longer-term comparison. By 2024, cruise calls were 9% above their 2019 level, yet cruise passenger numbers remained 63,243 below pre-pandemic levels, suggesting smaller vessels, altered itineraries, or weaker onshore demand. Spending declines while impact is exaggerated. Visitor spending mirrored the downturn. Total visitor expenditure between January and September fell by 7.2% or 192 million. But even when expenditure appears strong, it overstates tourism's domestic impact. Tourism receipts recorded in the balance of payments capture gross spending, not what is retained locally. So, using such an indicator might actually prove not very useful, coupled with the fact that its methodological accuracy has been called into question by the IMF. In 2024, total tourism expenditure was estimated at 3.6 billion. Yet, the combined contribution of accommodation and food services and transport, meaning land, sea, and air, to GDP amounted to roughly 1.7 billion. Just 47% of headline tourism receipts. The remainder leaks out, if it ever reaches St. Lucia's shores, through imports, profit repatriation by foreign-owned hotels and airlines, international booking platforms, and prepaid travel arrangements made abroad. Employment. The numbers don't add up. One statistic does not fit neatly. Employment in tourism rose sharply in 2025. The sector employed 17,025 persons in third quarter 2025, up from 13,871 in the third quarter of 2024, an increase of 3,154 workers, even as arrivals fell by nearly 4%. This divergence raises questions about data consistency, labor productivity, or lagged hiring decisions taken during the recovery phase. So, has tourism recovered? Only partially. By 2024, total visitor arrivals reached 491,573, equivalent to 98.5% of the 2019 total of 499,261. Stayover arrivals, however, has fully recovered, rising from 380,791 in 2019 to 435,573 in 2024. This recovery was driven almost entirely by the United States market, which surpassed its pre-pandemic level by 2022, rising from 191,719 in 2019 to 210,166. All other markets remain below their pre-pandemic peaks. Canada at 87%, the UK at 98%, the Caribbean at 68%, and other markets at 73%. What is certain is that the recovery is narrow and uneven. A fragile outlook. Looking ahead, risks are skewed to the downside. Heightened geopolitical tensions involving the United States, St. Lucia's dominant source market, alongside weak growth in the UK and Europe markets, could further suppress arrivals. Cruise tourism remains especially vulnerable to security concerns in the wider Caribbean. What does this imply? St. Lucia's post-2020 tourism performance appears to have been driven less by domestic competitiveness than by a region-wide rebound that is now fading. As neighboring destinations such as Grenada, Dominica, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and St. Kitts expanded airlift, add hotel capacity, and in St. Kitts' case, push aggressively into home porting, St. Lucia risks losing market share. The data points to a deeper question. What is St. Lucia's tourism strategy for the next 5 years and beyond? Without a clear answer, the island risks remaining dependent on favorable external tides, mistaking recovery elsewhere for resilience at home. Now, Tommy, of course, has promised us a more comprehensive analysis to come, and we are waiting for that. So, guys, what is your take on this entire situation? Now, in the meantime, somebody was sending me a story about shipping. Let me see if I can get some more information on this, but it's on Instagram, something that we don't really use here on Fire FM. I don't know why. Okay, so let me try to get this article about shipping. So this is from the St. Lucia Times. And it says, I think I need to go to the St. Lucia Times to get this properly, because I'm not sure. Okay. One minute, guys. Let me get this article. By the St. Lucia Times, which talks about shipping. I'm not sure what type of shipping, if it's cruise shipping or well, I guess it's Okay. And this is an Instagram. So, yes, the St. Lucia Times. And it's speaking about shipping. Oh, yes. So let me read this. This is an article that was uploaded today, and it's quite disturbing actually, but let me share this with you. And I don't need my glasses to read this one. This is bold print. They did this for people like me. Okay, so it says tankers have begun discharging Venezuelan crude oil at Caribbean islands, publicly signaling their activity in a move that marks a new trade order after the U.S. exerted control over Caracas's oil industry. This doesn't sound good. Two vessels delivered about 2.5 million barrels of Mary oil over the weekend to storage tanks on St. Lucia and Curacao, serving as staging posts for broader exports. Oh, no, 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 no. The shipping market is being shaken up by the intervention, with freight rates surging for some routes as tankers, including those previously part of the dark fleet, turn on their transponders to offload oil. The Kelly VLCC arrived at Castries, St. Lucia on January 18th to offload 1.9 million barrels of Mary. This marks the first shipment of Venezuelan crude oil to the island since December 2018. The Volans Aframax unloaded about 600,000 barrels at Curacao, on January 17th at the Bullen Bay storage facility. The vessel was carrying a cargo for Vitol, whatever. The Marabella VLCC reached South Riding Point in the Bahamas on January 19th with about 1.9 million barrels Vitol cargo. The Trump administration has tapped trading giants Trafigura Group and Vitol Group to help market Venezuelan barrels and is encouraging U.S. majors to invest in the country to revive its battered industry. Buckeye Partners LP operates the storage facility in St. Lucia. The company stated it is leveraging its operational expense and strategically positioned infrastructure to help bring Venezuelan crude oil to market safely, responsibly, and in accordance with all applicable laws. Prior to Washington's intervention, most flows headed to China via dark fleet tankers. Now cargoes are being offered to a wider range of destinations, including Indian and U.S. Gulf refiners. Somebody is saying, Angie, they have some people that can't understand what you're saying. But have some of them that can understand. Yeah? Somebody is saying this is true. Right now, I can see a huge tanker at the Buckeye site. I'm not sure how to process this information. I would think that as a small island developing state, largely dependent on the United States' goodwill for tourism and other things, that the last thing we in St. Lucia would want to do is to get ourselves involved in whatever it is that is going on in South America between them and the United States. But the article seems to be implying that this is a move sanctioned by the US. So I'm guessing, I'm speculating that this is the right thing to do because we want to stay on the United States' good side. Maybe if we comply with this, then maybe, just maybe, we will be spared the brunt of this new seeming hard diplomacy that is taking center stage between the North American continent, and by that I mean specifically the United States of America, and St. Lucia. I am going to reserve judgment on that until I get more information, because right now it could be just Buckeye taking advantage of, new avenues to make money. It could be that the government of St. Lucia has no part to play in this, that it's not their baby, as the Prime Minister is fond of saying. So we're going to reserve judgment on this until such time that we are either given more information or more information is revealed. But in the meantime, between time, let us deal with the subject that we do have the information on, and that is the decline in tourism in 2025. Now, we all heard the tourism minister yesterday, and he said that we are expecting a bumper crowd this cruise season. My fingers and toes are crossed. If I could, I would cross my eyes, because we do need as many cruise passengers as we can get our hands on. And this situation arises mainly from the fact that this government, this particular SLP administration, has seen it fit to take away all of our cruise revenue, or more accurately, the lion's share of our cruise tourism revenue, and give it away to GPH. We have some late comers to the broadcast today, guys. They're popping in just in time to say goodbye. But that's okay. They can always catch it on Facebook later on. So I have noticed that we have increased calls this year, this season. But as I said earlier, I'm noticing that while we have more ships, we seem to have less passengers. And hearing Tommy dissect it and put it into perspective in that way, and of course he was specifically referencing the numbers from January to September. Now granted, the Minister of Tourism has said that the cruise season really starts in October. So that's what he says. I didn't say it. The Minister for Tourism said that the tourism season starts in October. So the fact that there is a 3.9% decline from January to September 2025 as compared to 2024. And by the way, I need to remind you that this self-same tourism minister also said to us that 2024 is now the new gold standard because it used to be 2019. You remember that, guys? 2019 was our best year on record. But the tourism minister has made a point of saying that 2024 has surpassed arrivals and was way better than 2019. But now, when we look at the data as compiled by credible international agencies like the IMF, ECCB, and when our very own statistician and economic development guru, Mr. Tommy Descott, took the time to compile the data and compare it to 2029, we realize that this is true in only one category. So it's only in one category, and according to Tommy's research, it's the stayover arrivals. Stayover arrivals that has surpassed 2019. Only stayover arrivals. And in every other category, we have performed dismally. But again, they want us to believe that everything is fine, everything is cook and curry. We have it's sunshine, rainbows, unicorns, Care Bears, and sugar and spice and everything nice. But it's worth taking a deeper look, which is what we do here on Hard Talk. And guys, I am going to be bringing you tomorrow the follow-up article because Tommy released another article on this, I think later today. Let me just be sure that I'm giving you, of course, the right information. Okay, so yes. Oh no, this is an article by the St. Lucia Times. Okay, so this is not what I expected. I thought that was the deeper look that Tommy had promised us, because he did promise that he's going to look at the data and give a more detailed analysis, a deeper dive, so to speak. But this is an article from the St. Lucia Times, which is stating that St. Lucia enters historic peak week with 47,000 plus cruise visitors expected, not arriving here, expected. And they have crafted this so beautifully, guys. I need to share it with you. So, this is an article from the St. Lucia Times, and the source is Associates Times. So it says the St. Lucia Tourism Authority, SLTA, has confirmed that the island is currently experiencing one of its most significant cruise surges to date. Between January 18th and 25th, 2026, a total of 23 cruise ships are scheduled to dock, bringing a wave of global travelers and a substantial economic boost to local communities. Now, stop right there. The cruise ships have not docked. They're expected to dock, but they're already bringing a substantial economic boost to local communities. You see how they craft things in a way to make it sound better than it is. You see how they put on the makeup and the manicure and pedicure on things that simply make absolutely no sense. This is purely speculation. So it says, today, January 21st, that was yesterday, marks a pivotal point in the schedule. The island is hosting a massive fleet headlined by the Iona, which alone carries over 6,500 passengers. Now, I did notice this ship yesterday, and yes, the ship's capacity is 6,009 passengers. But were there so many people on board the ship? Because again, I remember when the Avia docked in St. Lucia for the first time, we were told, oh, there were 8,000 passengers. Only to find out that the ship's capacity was 8,000 passengers, but it actually docked here with 6,000, 2,000 people less than its full capacity. So before you tell us here on Hardtalk that the Iona is bringing over 6,500 passengers, you're going to have to show us some proof of that. So the next ship on the list is the Enchanted Princess with a capacity of 3,660 persons. But again, how many boarded the ship? Costa Fascinosa, capacity of 3,780. Norwegian Sky, capacity 2,004, and Windsurf, capacity 310. With over 16,000 potential visitors. And that is where you see, that's how you need to know when they are spritzing urine in your face and calling it rain. Now, that's the nicest way I could say that. I was cleaning it up for my audience. 16, you look for words like potential. Over 16,000 potential visitors on the island today alone. Local vendors, tour operators, and hospitality workers are seeing peak demand for distinctive local experiences. Peak demand. How do you know there is peak demand? These are the words that they use to dress it up. This is not reporting. This is speculation. This is sensationalism. This is an advertisement. This is a PR piece. Let me continue. As per the release schedule, the St. Lucia, okay, like I said, PR piece. As per the released schedule, the St. Lucia will receive 23 ships during this week of the ongoing cruise season. So we will have the Emerald Sakara, 100%, capacity of 100, MSC Virtuoso, capacity of 6,334, Windsurf, capacity of 310, Odyssey of the Seas, capacity 4,905, Explorer 2, capacity 100, Iona, capacity 6,509, Enchanted Princess, 3660, Norwegian Sky, 2004, Costa Fascinosa, 3,780, Windsurf, 310, Viking Sea, 930, Norwegian Epic, 4,228, Aidsol, 2,202, Renaissance, 1,440, MS Insignia, 824, Royal Clipper, 227, Ada Perla, 3,400, Caribbean Princess, 3,142, Silver Spirit, 540, Labello, 182, Hull 004, 1,100, Seaborn Ovation, 604, Royal Clipper, 227. What did Tommy's article say again? Oh yeah, that we had smaller ships making more cruise calls. Because if you look at this capacity, 23 ships, but out of those 23 ships, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Almost half of these 23 ships have a passenger capacity of less than 1,000 individuals. Like I said, you can fool some of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all of us all of the time, because some of us can read. Let's go back to the Facebook platform. It says here, Angie, save your breath on whatever this guy says. The man has passports to sell. What time he has for that? Somebody says, and Angie, I heard T.C. Brown say it yesterday on the Wave Station. What exactly did T.C. Brown say? Another says, Angie, the SLP have a degree in lying, especially PJP. Another says, I don't read SLT news. They appear to be an arm of the SLP. Well, SLT is actually regionally owned publication now, so I don't know. Somebody says, go in the arcade and ask them how was the sale today. I don't need to do that, sweetheart. I don't need to do that. I'll tell you why I don't need to do that. Because I've had so many experiences when these people, I always go back to the Avia because this was so prevalent to me. That day I saw so many people disembark that ship. You ever experience kicking over an ant's nest and watching all of the ants stream out? That is what I saw. So many people. But when I decided I was going to do a POV, which is point of view, I was expecting the taxi drivers to tell me something great. One of the taxi drivers revealed that only 15 of them had gotten trips. 15. I then went to the vendor's arcade. I expected to see the place bustling and, people, because a great majority of the individuals who arrived on the Avia that day, they didn't take taxis. They just walked down from Point Seraphin to the city center. So I thought, okay, great. These people are out there, shopping. To my surprise, when I entered the vendor's arcade, let me tell you, me konsa se vendor ti. Lameyo abamaton yo. And when I looked in the arcade, I didn't see any tourists buying anything. The tourists were not mingling. I think I saw one couple. And that one couple, they were standing in the middle of the arcade where there used to be, there was this little stage set up, or this little area set up for a live band to play in the arcade years ago. I don't think the arcade has seen any music for quite some time. You remember there used to be bands by the Castries Market on the steps playing cultural music? I haven't seen that in quite some time. It used to be persons dressed in traditional dress, in their wop duet, in their madras, standing on the step of the on the side of the market, facing the arcade with a traditional band playing music, and the people were dancing and the tourists would stop. And I haven't seen that in quite some time. So I saw these tourists that were actually in the arcade, standing in that little area, gazebo area in the middle of the arcade, where it's an open air area, and that was where the band used to be, and they would play music, and just looking up at the sky and sitting there just taking in some sun, not buying anything. So they're not fooling me. Somebody's saying PJP and Hile have a diploma. Diplomatic. Another person says, so we just adding the capacity, not passengers? No, sweetheart. That's just the capacity. Somebody's saying, Angie, what about newspapers? I don't know what you're asking me about newspapers, sweetheart. Be more specific. Another says, Angie, big show up for nada. Nothing behind that. Say Nusha finished. Don't mind them big mouth talks. LOL. And this is gonna be our show for today, guys. So we got to examine the tourism numbers and do a deep dive into what really is taking place in our cruise tourism industry. And I need to thank Mr. Descott. Tommy, thank you so much for going out there and getting the information and bringing it to us, compiling it in a way that we can understand and we can go through. Thank you guys for joining me here on Hard Talk. In the meantime, stay sharp. Keep your ears to the ground because we need to know what is going on in our country. See you guys here tomorrow. Don't forget, we have Dr. Secret at 6 in the morning with the Creole segment, and very soon we're going to be introducing the news to that segment as well. Also, we have the midday news update at 12, and you have me, of course, at 2 o'clock, Hard Talk, and another Creole segment in the afternoon. But these shows are coming on slowly but surely, so thank you for your patience. See you guys, same time, same place, here on Fire 107.7 FM. Bye bye.